Hi, this is Dave Borski. I've got Chris Quick on the Extension Cord Robotics podcast. How you doing, Chris?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It was a 10-degree wind chill here in San Antonio, Texas. How is it up there where you're at?
Well, I was working in our shop the other day, and I was trying to get some parts made, and the computer told me it was 9 Celsius, and then that it was -2 Celsius, and the machine wouldn't work. So it's cold. I think it's 18 today.
Oh, geez. 18 degrees. I'm just surprised we have power in Texas after last year's debacle.
I'll send you some wood if you have any problems.
That's what I need, man. I need wood, I need gas, I need everything. Last year we slept in the living room for 2 nights with everybody and just kind of cozied up, and it was a good time. I'll leave that for another story. But today let's talk about some of the things that cause issues in robotics. I know that you're a professor of mechatronics. You also have your own business, Realbotics. We can talk more about that. But just kind of wanted to talk today about what are some of the things that we've done in our decades in industry. You and I have been both in many manufacturing facilities, seen lots of things go wrong. I guess let's talk about weird projects first. Like, what's one of the weirdest projects or most, interesting or different kind of projects that you've worked on?
Yeah. This one was it was automating. It was more machine design than involving a particular robot, but we were designing a machine that uh, would cause a liquid bath of aluminum to crystallize, and we had to make all these little fingers that would go in and disturb the surface of the molten bath to be able to get these crystals to form. And so we had to make a machine that could handle, high temperatures and all that kind of stuff, and do all this weird processing. Um, Probably the most interesting um, automation project with a robot. That's kind of tough. I This one was interesting. It's kind of common, but we put a very large, like a 67 ABB IRB 6700 robot on a 15,000 ton forging press to do lubrication. And to give you an idea of size, like that robot's bigger than you or I. It's taller than us, and that forging press that I was going into, you could park like a car inside of it. It was a huge machine, and super dirty. And so when this lube robot would spray out the oil lubrication for the forging dies, it was basically spraying fire because the dies were high temperature, and it's pretty interesting. And standing there thinking, am I doing this for fun, or is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because we just made a robot with a flamethrower.
Those are weird projects. Pretty awesome. How do you avoid bringing automation, whether it's a robot or a machine or a conveyor, into your factory and having it just sit there? Because that's something we've seen before. Before we do that, just a couple notes, a couple statistics. 73% of CEOs surveyed by Fortune magazine say that the labor shortage, this is back in, I think, October of 2021, they say
Hmm.
that the labor shortage is impacting their strategic objectives for this year. Basically, people are getting sick, people don't want to work, people don't want to do repetitive jobs. And then we're also reaching a point in technology where robots and automation can do a lot of things that people previously were doing at a fairly affordable cost point. So, like, even just picking up this phone, moving it around, or picking up this pen and writing or erasing, a lot of these kind of things can be done with robots now fairly cheaply and easily. But the problem is that a lot of times companies jump in and buy a robot, and maybe they run into problems, they have trouble. I guess give me some examples that you can think of, things you've seen or some common problems, and how do you overcome those? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So uh, first of all, I mean, in all the places I'm visiting, definitely echo those statistics. One of the number one since COVID, one of the number one things I hear is I can't find people. Even before COVID, the labor shortage was around then, and everybody was working, and no one could find extra people. Now the reason that we can't find extra people is more complicated due to COVID, but most places I go to, that's the number one reason I hear that they're interested in robotics and automation is labor. So I definitely would echo those statistics. Um, so to avoid the robotic paperweight problem, it's a tough challenge, and a lot of companies fall victim to that. It's one of the things I'm always keeping an eye out for. Every time I go to one of these places, I'm looking for that machine or that robot that's sitting off in the corner, not turned on, gathering dust, and I always try to ask about those. Um, and in a lot of cases, it's people are learning, it ends up that way because it's some sort of lesson learned. And the tough part for manufacturers and small businesses that don't have experience in robotics and automation is they don't know what they don't know, and they have a lot of lessons to learn. And so they try to dive in and get a robot or get some sort of automation in their factory, and they just don't know where all their blind spots are, and that leads to making decisions and purchases that just don't add up over time or don't work at all, and they're stuck with a paperweight. So what the best defense to that is to one, try to first set your expectations of what exactly is it that your goal is for this particular machine, and you have to work with either an engineer or make sure that you're bringing that down to hard numbers that you can write on a piece of paper that defines success for you. So things like rates, things like costs, uptime, how many products or particular things that this device is supposed to be able to handle, and start there, and then look at how practical that achieving that with a particular piece of automation actually is, because there's usually a disconnect between what the automation engineer is thinking and producing for you, and what the owner of the business it has in their head as a vision. And the quickest way that you can avoid ending up with a paperweight, something that uh, owner or plant manager is not unhappy with, is to try to get all the hard numbers down on a piece of paper, and make it really clear.
So,
So
how much of that final picture do you need to have crystallized in your head and in simulations and spreadsheets? Like, do you need to have like, this is what it's going to look like, this is what it's going to do, or is there some way to kind of take a few baby steps to like, hey, we want to just try something out and see what
right.
we work? Like, when would you try experiment versus plan?
So it you have all of those options available to you. And I think really what it is setting the expectations of those that you're working with. So in some cases, a training cell might be the way to go. Maybe your goal is to introduce robotics and automation to your company and to your culture, and you have a lot of ideas about how you might want to do that in manufacturing. But the first step is, let's get a robot in there that doesn't maybe have a particular job earmarked for it, and let's start to get our staff trained up. Let's get ourselves familiar with how this thing works, and get our head wrapped around what it can and can't do, so that then when we go to spend more money buying 5 of them, or buying a larger capacity robot, or additional equipment that's needed, we have a lot better understanding about what that piece of equipment is going to be able to achieve at the end of the day. So if you have that ability to be able to take that first step, and start with more of a training type cell, maybe that equipment gets repurposed or gets molded into an actual production application a little bit further down the line. But that's a very good first step. Uh, there's the experts of your process are the people doing it. It's not the automation engineer. The automation engineer is an expert of taking the robots and the technology and making them do all kinds of things. But we aren't the people who make soda cans or fill bags of popcorn or any number of those manufacturing processes. The experts are the people who are running those factories. And so somehow we have to get what both sides know meshed together enough that we can make really good decisions. Training cells a great start. The other thing to think about is if you got to go, jump right in and start with a piece of equipment on the floor, is to try to understand what the specifics of how many jobs or how many parts is this equipment supposed to see. So a lot of things that were easy to automate, the low-hanging fruit, is been taken care of, and there are one-off products that you run hundreds or thousands of the same thing every day over and over again, making light bulbs, making beer bottles, something like that. And that is a very repeatable, consistent job that you're trying to get automation to do. A lot of the stuff that we see today is people that have manpower. They have people out there in their factory, and those people for the first 3 hours of the day do XYZ task. And then for 30 minutes, they go and take these parts out of this bin and put them over here to get ready to assemble this next part. And so when you want to bring automation in and you have this kind of array of activities that you need some automation to do, the equation gets really complicated. And that's where you got to put down all those details on paper to say, okay, this robot is going to do these 2 things or these 4 things. It's going to take these gears out of this bin and it's going to make them in stacks of 10. And then it's also going to apply grease on this bearing that gets placed in the center of that gear. And you have to define that really well, so that you don't end up with a paperweight. So hopefully that helps. We can definitely talk longer. There's hours of conversation around this problem.
I mean, a minute ago it said that your network was low. Or do you guys have decent Wi-Fi out there?
I'm right next to it, but overall, we don't have the greatest internet. We're waiting to get better. I'm on the list for Starlink satellite, which will be awesome, but I need to check maybe March is the last I heard.
So right now you have horses that are going back and forth down the road carrying the bits.
Well, if we can afford it, we're going to get the horses. But right now we have a string, and there's actually a large can over here. And then we've got somebody else listening on the other end, typing all this information in and sending it to you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, high tech, man.
It's working. It is. Yeah, but it's one job, and the person's not a paperweight. So we had it very well defined.